Hi, welcome to the recap room. In today's video, we'll be talking about a 2008 American war thriller film called The Hurt Locker. Warning, spoilers ahead, watch at your own risk. The movie begins in 2004 in Baghdad, where a troop of American and Iranian soldiers is seen helping the civilians to clear the area. Turns out, they have discovered a bomb in that area, and they are on their way to dispose of it safely. Then, we are introduced to 3 soldiers of the US Army Explosive Disposal Unit handling a robot to dispose of the bomb. They are Sergeant J.T. Sanborn, Specialist Owen Eldridge, and Staff Sergeant Matthew Thompson. As Sanborn carefully operates the robot, they discover that the explosive is capable of some serious damage. However, the robot breaks down before they could disarm it, and Matthew volunteers to defuse it manually. He quickly suits up in a bomb suit and makes his way toward the explosive. Soon, Eldridge notices a man standing in the distance holding a small cell phone in his hand. Realizing that he's carrying a remote control to the explosive, Eldridge rushes to stop him. Unfortunately, before Eldridge could put down the suspect, the man triggers the cell phone, which causes a huge explosion in the area. Sadly, this tragic event leads to Matthew's death. Next, we see an emotional Sanborn going through Matthew's belongings as they are being packed to be sent to his home. Shortly after, Sanborn is introduced to Sergeant First Class William James, who has been sent as the new team leader of their explosive disposal team in the Iraq War. He replaces their former leader, late Matthew Thompson. However, James clarifies that he's not there to replace him and presents his grief for the loss of their previous leader. The next day, James along with Sanborn and Eldridge are on their way to dispose of yet another bomb discovered nearby. As they are driving down the highway, we learn that the general public of Iraq doesn't get along with US soldiers and thinks they are invading their country. Soon they arrive at the detonation site and meet up with a squad that called in the discovery of the explosives. As the men get to work, James decides to disarm the explosive manually, even though Sanborn strongly suggests that they should use the bot instead. Then, James quickly gets dressed in a bomb suit and makes his way with a rather unpleasant attitude. On the other hand, Sanborn and Eldridge consider James' maverick disposal methods and attitudes reckless, raising tensions among the squad. Moments later, a car comes speeding towards James and he stops it at a gunpoint. The soldiers then immediately force the man to come off the car and confiscate him on the ground. After that, James continues toward his mission and defuses the bomb with his bare hands. Just as he was about to leave, he discovers 5 other similar explosives buried in the vicinity of the bomb site. As he continues to defuse them one by one, we see a suspicious-looking Iraqi leaving the place after observing James for a while. In the next scene, Eldridge is seen playing video games when he is met by military psychiatrist Lieutenant Colonel John Cambridge. Eldridge is still upset about the death of his ex-leader Matthew and snaps at Cambridge. Calmly, Cambridge tries to console him, but Eldridge insists that all of this is meaningless, as he will also face Matthew's fate sooner or later. On the other hand, James is approached by an Iraqi youth nicknamed Beckham, attempting to sell DVDs. Initially, James tries to ignore him, but soon he takes a liking of him. The scene then cuts to the next day. The soldiers have discovered a bomb at one of the UN buildings, and we see them helping civilians out of the building. Amidst the ongoing chaos, James and his squad arrive at the scene to defuse the bomb. After learning that the explosives are in a car behind the building, James quickly suits up and gets ready for the job. As he gets closer to the car, he is shot by an armed insurgent from a distant building. However, the bullet hits the car and it immediately catches fire. This further amplifies the ongoing chaos as the soldiers try to put down the rebel terrorist, while James tries to extinguish the burning car. Shortly after, the terrorist is put down by the squad, and James discovers a crazy amount of explosive armed in the trunk of the car. Realizing that he could probably get killed with disarming the explosives, James takes off his suit to be as comfortable as possible and starts disarming the bombs. While he's at it, the squad discovers a guy filming them from a distant building. This confuses them and makes them uncomfortable. As a result, Sanborn urges James to leave the bomb site and evacuate as quickly as possible. However, since James is as stubborn as anyone, he throws away his headset and stops responding to Sanborn's calls. After a while, he successfully manages to defuse the explosives, but gets hit on the face by Sanborn for removing his headsets.
Yeah.
However, James is later visited and thanked by a high-ranking officer for his contribution, as he has defused 874 bombs so far. The next day, Beckham catches the attention of James while playing football. He challenges the kid to stop his goal kick and offers him $10 for the challenge. Eventually, James loses the bet, but the two continue to play, forming a bond with each other over time. In the next scene, we see Eldridge, Sanborn, and James destroying the explosives that they retrieve around the cities. Amidst the drill, James realizes that he left his gloves at the detonation site and goes to pick them up. As he makes his way toward the site, Sanborn openly contemplates killing James by accidentally triggering the explosives because of his unwillingness to cooperate. This makes Eldridge uncomfortable, but nothing is done, and James returns back safely. Returning to Camp Victory in their Humvee, the team encounters 5 armed men in traditional Arab garb and casual attire standing near a fort excursion. The soldiers have a tense encounter with their leader, who reveals they are private military contractors and British mercenaries. They also reveal that they have captured 2 prisoners featured on the most wanted Iraqi playing cards. As the two groups discuss their missions in Iraq, suddenly they come under heavy fire. This results in confusion between them as they run back and forth to take cover, while one by one they are shot to death. When the prisoners attempt to escape, the leader of the mercenaries shot at them since they are valuable dead or alive. One by one, the enemy snipers kill 3 of the mercenaries, including their leader. Later, Sanborn and James borrow a gun from the other group to neutralize 3 attackers, while Eldridge kills a 4th. Later that night, back at the camp, we see the trio spending time together, drinking alcohol and having fun. Eldridge opens up about him being scared on the battlefield, but James appreciates the bravery that he showed earlier. It is then revealed that James is actually married and also has an infant son. He suggests Sanborn get married as well, but Sanborn resents taking such a huge responsibility. Once they are done drinking and having fun, each of them returns to their respective rooms. A few days later, the EOD unit is once again called upon for service. Just as they are leaving, Colonel Cambridge approaches them and asks to join them on their mission. Previously, Eldridge has provoked Cambridge to come up and see what they have to deal with on a live battlefield. Hence, Cambridge accepted his challenge. Shortly after, they arrive at an abandoned warehouse to raid it. The squad carefully makes its way inside the warehouse, as there might be insurgents hiding inside. After searching for a while, James discovers the body of a small child he believes is Beckham. He's devastated to see his dead body, as he had formed a connection with Beckham. Meanwhile, Colonel Cambridge is out there, warning the civilians to stay away from the danger zone. Back inside the warehouse, James removes the surgically implanted bomb from the dead body, even though he finds it hard to cope with the fact that Beckham is now dead. Once he's done removing the explosives, he carries Beckham's body and comes outside the warehouse. However, during the evacuation, Colonel Cambridge is killed by an explosion. Eldridge then comes out of the Humvee to check, but only finds Cambridge's helmet. Witnessing such an intense event, Eldridge blames himself for his death and breaks down in the scene. The next day, James approaches the guy who used to sell DVDs with Beckham in hopes of meeting with Beckham's family. However, there's a significant miscommunication between them, as the guy fails to understand a single English word. Eventually, James becomes suspicious of the guy, thinking he's pretending to not understand him, and leaves the place. Later that night, James holds the same guy at gunpoint and forces him to take him to Beckham's house. However, the guy misleads him, and James breaks into an Iraqi professor's house seeking revenge for Beckham, but his search reveals nothing. Later that night, James and his crew are called to investigate an explosion at the Green Zone. It was a petrol tank detonation, and they were called to check whether it was a suicide bombing case. Soon, the squad arrives at the site, where a lot of civilians are injured and killed because of the blast. As the squad begins their investigation in the blast site, James decides to hunt for the insurgents responsible, guessing they are still nearby. Meanwhile, Sanborn and Eldridge protest, claiming it's not their job to go after the insurgents, as they are only a part of the bomb defusing squad. However, James has already made up his mind and engaged in a pursuit. As a result, Eldridge and Sanborn got no choice left but to follow him reluctantly. Later, the trio split up to pace up their search, but it turns out to be a bad idea. As Eldridge is making his way through one of the alleys, he is captured by the insurgents. James and Sanborn hit a few gunshots and realize that Eldridge must be in trouble. Then, The two quickly reunite and are able to rescue Eldridge, but one of James' round hits Eldridge in the leg. As a result, Eldridge starts panicking, thinking he will die soon. Meanwhile, James tries his best to calm him down, and soon enough, they bring him back to the camp. The following morning, James is approached by Beckham, alive and well, urging him to play with him. But since James had been deeply affected because of his attachment to Beckham, he just ignores him and walks by silently. James and Sanborn then go to meet Eldridge, who is about to be airlifted for surgery. Thankful for being alive, Eldridge thanks James for saving his life, but at the same time, he also blames him for his injury, since it was James' plan to go after the insurgents. In the next scene, James and Sanborn unit is called to another mission in the last 2 days of their rotation. In the scene, an innocent Iraqi civilian has a bomb vest strapped to his chest. The man appeals that he was forced to put on the vest and claims to be innocent. Meanwhile, the soldiers warn him to stay still, otherwise they will have to shoot him. After that, James approaches the guy, even though his peers request him not to go any closer, calling it a suicide mission. As tensions begins to rise in the area, James tried to cut off the locks to remove the vest, but there are too many of them. Having no other option left, he abandons the man, who is then killed when the bomb explodes, and James is thrown away by the blast. Luckily, James survives the blast, and the squad makes their way back to the camp. However, Sanborn is the one who is most affected by the incident. He confesses that he is distraught by the man's death and breaks down on the way. He then reveals to James that he can no longer cope with the pressure and wants to return home to have a son and be with his family. In the next scene, after the Bravo Company's rotation ends, James returns to his ex-wife Connie and their infant son, who still lives with him in his house. As days pass by, it is clear that he is bored with a regular civilian life at home. One day, while playing with his son, James confesses to him that there's only one thing he knows he loves. In the final scene of the movie, James starts another tour of duty, serving with Delta Company, a US Army EOD unit on its 365-day rotation. And that's the end of the video. For more movie recaps like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well, so that you won't miss our next upload. Thank you for watching.